Hello, today I am going to present the first unit, that is the cellular foundation of life. So in this tutorial, I will be starting from unit 1, chapter 1, that is introduction to biology, themes and concepts of biology, the process of science, that is the chapter 1. Then it goes to chemistry of life, cell structures and cell function, how cells obtain energy, photosynthesis, and the details of photosynthesis. So what I have done basically in the first tutorial, I'm going to introduce the very basics about the introductory biology, and that will be worth for class 9, 10, 11, 12. So for all those people who needs quite basic knowledge in biology, and that is why I decided in the first lecture I will be covering purely basics of introduction to biology. And in that case, here, when I will be finishing this particular tutorial, especially this sub lecture, so by the end of this section, you will be able to understand and identify and describe the properties of life. And this is what I'm going to present today. Then describe the levels of organization, which will be the next part, and some examples of different subdisciplines in biology like botany, geology, mycology, biology, and many more things. So what is biology? Biology is the science that studies life or living organisms. What exactly is life? This may sound like a silly question with an obvious answer, but it is not that easy to define. For example, a branch of biology that is called virology, which studies viruses, and it exhibit some of the characteristics of living organisms and lacks others. It turns out that alternative viruses can attack living organisms and may cause disease and even reproduce. They do not meet the criteria that the biologists have established for defining life. So there is a need to understand the well-defined properties of life. And now, in general, there are 7 properties. For example, the order, sensitivity, reproduction, adaptation, growth and development, regulation, homeostasis, energy processing. And if you want to see in summarized way, it could look like growth, reproduction, heredity, homeostasis, metabolic activities, cellular structure and composition, responding to the environment. That is here called sensitivity. So the first part, that is order. So here, order means what? That is, life is a characterized by highly ordered or well-defined structures. And that is what it means, order here. For example, in a human has a well-defined heart, brain, kidney, eyes, ears, nose, and many such well-defined things you can see physically or phenotypically. So this is called order. For example, if you want to see in a tissue, it could look like a tissue could look like with multiple compartments, that is cell. And then these cells are creating a structure that is called tissue. So similar type of cells are creating some structure that is called tissues. And then you could go to cells, like human blood cells, how it looks like, you could see here. Tissues could look like here. Then organs or organ system here. Then it goes to organisms and population, for example, here trees. And then ecosystem, water, plants, and many other living organisms inside water and in the forest area. Then it comes to biosphere, that is, encompasses all the ecosystems on the earth. So let's go here. Second, properties. So first properties is order. That means well-defined structures. And then second property is sensitivity. For example, an organism could respond to diverse stimuli. For example, this is the plant structure. When you will touch or bring your finger to this plant, the leaves will start changing the position. And like here, plants can bend towards a source of light or respond to touch. Source of light, for example, sunflower. Even teeny bacteria can move toward or away from chemicals. That is a process called chemotaxis movement. And or light, that is phototaxis movement. Then movement toward a stimulus is considered a positive response, while movement away from the stimulus could be considered as a negative response. So these two properties are very clear and easy to understand. Now, third the property is reproduction. Like single cell organism, for example, reproduce by first duplicating their DNA. So before going to DNA RNA, I can just say reproduction means to increase the population by certain means, and that is here. So for example, single cell organism could reproduce by first duplicating their DNA, which is the genetic material, and then divide it equally as the cell prepares to divide to form two new cells. So one cell will form two new cells now, and then 2 to 4 and 4 to 8, something like this. Now, many multicellular organisms could produce specialized reproductive cells that will form new individuals or organisms. When reproduction occurs, DNA containing genes is passed along to an organism's offspring. These genes are the reason that offspring will belong to the same species and will have similar characteristics, such as the color, blood type. And then next, adaptation. For example, to live in highly cold region or highly warm region or inside water, that is to adapt the environment. So in definition, we could say all living organisms exhibit a fit to the environment. Biologists refer to this fit as adaptation. Or in another way, you can say an action or characteristic that helps a living organism to survive in its environment. So that helps to get their food, to reproduce, to protect from predators, survive the climate, deals with geographical features. And examples of adaptations are diverse and unique, from heat resistance archaea that live in boiling hot springs to the tongue length of a nectar feeding moth that matches the size of the flower from which it feeds. All adaptations enhances the reproductive potential of the individual exhibiting them, including their ability to survive, to reproduce. So adaptations are not constant, As an environment changes, natural selection causes the characteristics of individual in a population to track those changes. So in simple way, you can say an action that helps a living organism to survive in different environments or in their most suitable environment. It helps in getting food, reproduction, protection from the predators, survive the climate, and deals with geographical features. That's it. Next is coming here, growth and development. So when the cells divide or when there is a new organism that needs to be grown up, even plant or animal. For example, here we could see easily how the frog is developed to young or old stage. Similarly, how the plant from germination to senescence goes. For example, germination to seedling, seedling to vegetative, then flowering, then senescence. So thus we can say all living things grow and develop. And that is one of the potential property of life. Growth, that means increase in size and shape. Development, mature over time and have a lifespan to live and die. So you can see the same thing. If you are not able to read or don't want to read, you can just see by the figures what growth and development means in different perspective, if in terms of human, in terms of plant, in terms of frog, or any other thing. Next is regulatory properties. So to run a life, there is a need to have well-organized regulatory process. That is regulation mechanism. For example, even the smallest organisms are complex and require multiple regulatory mechanisms to control internal functions, such as the transport of nutrients, its response to stimuli, coping the environmental stress. For example, organ systems such as the digestive system or circulatory systems perform specific functions like carrying oxygen throughout the body, remove wastes, delivering nutrients to every cell and cooling the body. So regular, for example, another example, a stimulus could be, this is kind of feedback loop. So positive and negative feedback loops are present. Something, for example, if you say regulation means if you turn on the switch for light or turn off the switch for light. This is also one of the way to control. Then, for example, fan, if you want to have high or low speed to regulate. Similarly, the lights are regulated, higher light, low light, depending on what kind of lights process you are using at home. So even those systems require regulatory system. So similarly, to function a living organism at proper level, there is a need to have proper regulatory mechanism. And so it is also very important property of life. Now, homeostasis. So homeostasis, coming to homeostasis. Homeostasis means in a defined way, if we say, to maintain the cell's current stage for proper functioning and control and coordination. So if you want to say to function properly, cell requires an appropriate condition such as proper temperature, pH, and concentrations of diverse chemicals. These conditions may, however, change from one moment to next. Organisms are able to maintain internal conditions within a narrow range almost constantly, despite environmental changes, through a process called homeostasis or steady state, the ability of an organism to maintain constant internal condition. All these things comes under homeostasis. So you can see in this figure how normal body temperature is maintained. That is the part of homeostasis. Then another way here, control center, effector, receptor to keep the balance, and that is homeostasis. Now, last property of life, that is energy processing. To function anything, you need to supply energy. Similarly, a living organism or a cell needs energy, and that comes from different sources. For example, I'm not going to say what are the molecules, this, that, at this stage. This is quite basic for any person. So here I will be just saying basic thing. When you eat something, then it takes some chemical processes inside, and that is somehow a kind of source of energy. This is like, if you want to understand. So animal gets their energy from consuming other organisms or plants or some other things. Plants get their energy mostly from sunlight. That is the alternate way or alternative way of defining source of energy or energy processing. But this is for basic thing. And of course, I will be discussing the details. Now, finally, since we will be going for next class to another level, so now today I am going to say what is cellular organization. So the general structures move along a line from cell to tissue and tissue to organ to a living organism or being, which gives us the word called organism, a living thing with organ system. So first it comes to cell, cell to tissues, tissues to organs, organs to organism, organism is final. So now, what is cell? Cell is the kind of building blocks of life. Like a brick or a building, cell is the same thing for living organism. So that is the easiest way to define. Cell is the building block of life. That's it. There is no need to go for such any complex definition of cell. And the cells, similar kind of cells, forms tissues, then tissues forms organ, and organs form an organism. That's it. So next class will be levels of organization of living things. So keep watching our channel and subscribe it. Thank you very much.